Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over Major Tropical Storm Henry and giving you your final update on this storm. It's about to make landfall somewhere over Long Island or potentially into Connecticut and Rhode Island. So we have a little bit of an area where it is expected to make landfall. We're going to be taking a look at the current satellite, the current radar, and much more to time this storm out for you guys and give you all the information you need to know. Before we get into it, I'm going to start a new part of the video or kind of a new segment. It's called the weather photo of the day. If you have any photos from especially Hurricane Henry or Tropical Storm Henry, and if you're in the path of it, send over your photos to the email in the description, and I'll definitely feature you guys in the video there. So definitely leave your pictures in that email address. Just send them over, and I'll be picking the best one that I find to feature into the video. So it's a new part of the video that I'm thinking about doing, and I'm just testing it out over the next couple of days. So again, send over your photos, and let's get right into the video. Taking a look at the current National Weather Service page, you can see that we have a few air quality alerts in effect for the west, as well as some red flag warnings in a little bit of Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. We have some heat advisories for parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, and then all the way down to the Gulf Coast. And then we have a few excessive heat warnings as well into Oklahoma. We then have some flood watches and flash flood warnings up for much of the Northeast, and we also have some tropical storm warnings up for the Northeast as well, with a few storm surge warnings also in effect. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 109 degrees in Death Valley, California, as well as Stovepipe Wells, California, both within Death Valley National Park. If we look at the low temperature, Peter Sinks, Utah, they got down to 24 degrees, and then 21 miles west-southwest of Big Piney, Wyoming, also got down to 24 degrees. And then the highest rainfall report was 9.09 inches of rainfall. There was a very heavy band of rainfall that caused some flash flood warnings just west of Nashville in McEwen, Tennessee. They got 9.09 inches of rainfall, so a ton of rainfall. I was actually expecting the heaviest rainfall numbers to be somewhere from the path of Hurricane Henry, but I'm assuming that probably tomorrow is when we're going to get the bulk of those reports to come in from Hurricane Henry. Taking a look at this storm, the current National Hurricane Center page, you can see that we do have Tropical Storm Henry up there, about to make landfall, most likely in Rhode Island or eastern Connecticut. Does have the outside chance that it's just over the border into Massachusetts. And then we have this area right here where we have a less than 40% chance. I believe it's at 10% chance of developing as of right now. Who knows? It definitely could develop. We've seen crazier things happen so far this hurricane season. Taking a look at Tropical Storm Henry, you can see the satellite imagery there. It's located at 40.7 degrees north, which is basically the same latitude as New York City. The maximum winds are at 70 miles per hour. Minimum pressure of 986 millibars, so it's at one of its strongest phases as of right now. And it hasn't weakened all that much, even though it's into those cooler waters. Moving north-northwest at 16 miles per hour, so it is going to be expected to move a little bit further northwest and then eventually inland before making a track out further to the east, somewhat like that. Taking a look at the current radar imagery, you can see that here is the storm. You can see that it's right over here, and we can only really pick up what's happening on the radars that are on land. We don't, of course, have any radar on over the sea, so we can't really see what's happening with the core of Henry. But based on the infrared satellite imagery, we can kind of assume and estimate what that rainfall is. So all that rainfall that you see offshore, mainly from infrared data that we're just transferring over to radar, so we don't have exact details on that, but the stuff on land is much more detailed. You can see that we do have a few noticeable features. We have a line of very heavy rainfall, which is basically following the path from Boston to Hartford, and that is just to the north of that I-95 corridor. So you're seeing a very heavy band of rainfall within that area. We then see that extend further to the south into parts of western Connecticut, Long Island, parts of New York as well, and then into northeastern New Jersey, where we have some of that lighter to moderate rainfall. What we're going to see is that this storm moves inland. So even though you're looking at this, maybe you'll live, let's say, in western Long Island, or if you live in western Connecticut and you're saying there's really not a lot going on right now, I thought this was supposed to be a big event. Most of the rainfall still has not happened and is not expected to happen at least for another 6+ hours. So when we're expecting the storm to go inland is when you're going to get the bulk of the rainfall, especially if you live further inland into parts of upstate New York, into also a little bit of western Massachusetts, even up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So we're going to have to wait for this storm to curl up into New York and then eventually out into Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine as it heads further to the east before we actually see most of the rainfall into those areas. We also could see a lot of flooding. Now, this area is quite urban, especially as you get right around some of the bigger cities. So we have a big urban corridor right here, and then we have another one centered around Boston. The areas around there are much more forested and less close together. So we could see more flooding in terms of water kind of piling up within valleys in the hilly regions further to the north of the city, and then also we could see a lot. We do have a lot of small streams within this area, especially away from New York City, and some of the more urbanized areas, and that usually can cause some flooding. So if you live next to a stream, and I'm sure you would know, if you probably have past experience of flooding, you want to pay attention to that, and you should know the local effects that some of the local topography will have on the total rainfall and the total flooding impact. Taking a look at the key messages, the first one from the National Hurricane Center says dangerous storm surge inundation is expected to begin this morning in portions of Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and southeastern Massachusetts, where a storm surge warning has been issued. Residents in these areas should follow any advice given by local officials. So there have been some evacuation orders that were placed over some of these areas. That is up to you, really, if you want to evacuate. By this point, if you haven't evacuated, probably not worth it to do it because the storm is already there. But I would definitely have at least followed some of the advice from some of the local officials in terms of whether you should evacuate. It's mainly up to what they say, because they know the local area much better than I would. So you're gonna want to follow them a lot more and follow your instinct as well, because you know the local topography. You know how these situations play out. If you live close to a river that usually floods, you're going to, of course, want to go maybe over to a friend's house or a family member's house that is farther away from that and doesn't flood as often. Second one says hurricane conditions are expected to begin this morning in portions of Long Island, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, where a hurricane warning is in effect. Tropical storm conditions will begin in these areas within the next couple of hours. So something I want to say, this key messages update was from 5 a.m. Eastern time when they had a hurricane warning up there. They don't have it up anymore. So that last part where they said a hurricane warning is in effect, it was downgraded to a tropical storm because Henry weakened below that 74-mile-per-hour threshold. Third one says heavy rainfall may lead to considerable flash, urban, and small stream flooding, along with the potential for widespread minor to isolated moderate river flooding over portions of Long Island, New England, eastern New York, and New Jersey. And then swells from Henry will continue to affect much of the east coast of the U.S. during the next day or so. These swells could cause life-threatening surf and rip currents. So yeah, you definitely don't want to be out on the beach as of right now, because of course it's raining, and also we have tropical storm Henry, which is just offshore. So you want to stay away from the beaches. Even if you live down in the mid-Atlantic where it's not raining, even if you live in the southeast, you want to just stay off the beaches for probably just one more day, and then probably tomorrow, maybe even Tuesdays when it should be clear to go back onto those beaches just because of rip currents and storm surge from this event. Taking a look at the track of this storm, again, you can see it's just southeast of Long Island. It's expected to move northwest into central New England, and then eventually it'll curve out further to the east. This is when the areas that are inland are going to get the majority of the rainfall out of this event. So if you're inland and you're not seeing any rainfall just yet, most of it is going to come either tomorrow night or tonight or into tomorrow morning. You can also see that we have those tropical storm warnings, which are up for much of the northeast coast right now, and that's indicated by that blue shade right there. Taking a look at the intensity guidance, you can see that right now it is a high-end tropical storm, and it's expected to either weaken quite rapidly down into a weak tropical storm, or maybe even down into a tropical depression, especially as it's moving over central New England. Just because it is inland, it will be weakening quite noticeably and quite quickly. So, taking a look at the total rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center, this is a good map because it actually shows both the track, which you can kind of see based on the rainfall field, and it also shows you how much rainfall you're going to see. And this is from the Weather Prediction Center. They have been fairly accurate with past storms, so I would definitely take this quite seriously because what they're showing is probably quite accurate. They have been quite good with these forecasts over the past couple of hurricanes and tropical storms. You can see that in that light green we have 1 to 2 inches, so that's for pretty much the entirety of this northeast area, except for the areas further to the north and inland of the coast. We have 2 to 4 inches in that dark green, which covers a good majority of that northeast area still. So for southern New England, even up into parts of the Green Mountains in Vermont, and also into southwestern New Hampshire, through much of the Hudson Valley in New York, and then also northern New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania. That's where we're looking at 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, 4 to 6 inches of rain into eastern and central Long Island. Well, I would say actually the bulk of Long Island, western Connecticut, western Massachusetts, the lower Hudson Valley in New York, and then a little bit of northern and northwestern New Jersey, as well as northeastern Pennsylvania. We then have a few pockets of 6+ inches of rainfall, just in that orange shade. I will say there is a significant risk of flash flooding, especially for these areas northwest of the city. These areas are a lot hillier, so you're not going to be seeing most of that rainfall accumulate on those higher peaks or on the top of the hills. You're probably going to see that flowing down into the valley areas, which are usually more populated, so that could cause some flooding. Also, we do see quite a few rivers flow throughout this area. The Hudson River, of course, one of them, but even those smaller rivers that kind of just go through your backyard or through your town may cause flash flooding and may cause river flooding, and that's something that you want to pay attention to, especially if you live in some of those hillier areas that are northwest of New York City and Hartford and the entire I-95 corridor. Taking a look at the risk of flash flooding, 20 to 50% as you get into that red shade. This is where we have the highest risk of flash flooding, and even if you're in just that yellow shade, flash flooding is still a possibility. And I was actually surprised they didn't extend this further to the east, because there's a really heavy band of rainfall that right now is moving through Boston, which we showed in that radar image, and I'm expecting that there probably is some flash flooding within there. So even if you're in that green shade, even, you want to pay attention to the radar because flash flooding is possible within all these areas. Taking a look at the storm surge forecast, 1 to 3 feet along the New Jersey coastline as you get through the southern shore of Long Island, 2 to 4 feet, and then once you get to Long Island Sound into eastern Long Island, and then back through parts of Cape Cod, that's where we're looking at 2 to 4 feet. On the northern shores of Cape Cod, that's where we're looking at 3 to 5 feet for Long Island Sound through Cape Cod. For the northern shore of Cape Cod, that's where we're looking at 2 to 4 feet, and then we're looking at 1 to 3 feet around Boston Harbor and some of those areas in eastern Massachusetts. Taking a look at the aircraft reconnaissance, this is the last pass. Right now, the aircraft that's going into the storm, I believe, is still in North Carolina, so it's flying over there to get to Tropical Storm Henry. So On the most recent past, they found mostly tropical storm level winds on the eastern end of this. Not too many reports of hurricane force winds, and this would be at the upper level. So you would have to subtract probably 5 or 10 miles per hour off of that wind speed to actually find what it would be at the surface. So they did find some fairly strong winds on that eastern end. If we kind of extrapolate that, we're expecting this to move somewhat like this, or maybe not as dramatic, somewhat like this. So you would expect the strongest winds to be just to the east of that into eastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and eastern Connecticut over the next few hours. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Again, if you have any of your weather photos from Hurricane Henry or Tropical Storm Henry, especially if you have any flooding photos, or if you have any photos of just, or any videos of the wind or of the flooding, definitely send them over, and I will probably feature you in one of these videos. So that the email address is in the description down below. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.